She didn't just park in his driveway. She took something from him, again and again, until the morning he decided he was done asking nicely. What happened next couldn't be undone. Not by her, not by anyone. The summer Callum Briggs turned 43, he learned that patience was not a virtue. It was a slow, quiet surrender. He had moved into the house on Wrentham Close 3 years earlier, after the divorce, after the custody arrangement that left him with weekends and school holidays and a particular silence that settled into the walls of an empty home. The house was modest, a two-story semi-detached with a narrow driveway that ran along the left side of the property, just wide enough for his Volvo with perhaps 6 inches to spare on either side. He had chosen it partly for that driveway. After years of living in an apartment building with shared parking, the driveway felt like ownership. It felt like permanence. It felt like something that was his. His neighbor to the right was an elderly couple named the Featherstones, who grew tomatoes in raised beds and waved from their porch every morning without fail. His neighbor to the left was a woman named Dara Whitlock. Dara Whitlock arrived on Wrentham Close approximately 7 months after Callum. She came with a moving truck, a teenage daughter named Brielle, a rotating cast of friends who helped carry furniture and stayed for wine, and a silver Audi A5 that she parked on her very first night, partially across the entrance to Callum's driveway. He noticed it the next morning when he was leaving for work. The Audi's rear left corner was sitting close enough to the edge of his driveway entrance that he had to ease out at an angle, holding his breath, checking his mirrors twice. He didn't say anything. She had just moved in. It was probably a mistake. Everyone made mistakes. The following evening, the Audi was back. Same position. If anything, slightly further into his entrance than before. This time, Callum walked across the strip of grass that separated their driveways and knocked on her door. Dara answered wearing paint-stained overalls, her dark hair pulled back, holding a glass of red wine. She was attractive in an effortless, distracted way, the kind of person who moved through the world assuming it would accommodate her. "Hi," Callum said. "I'm Callum from next door. I just wanted to mention, your car is partially blocking my driveway entrance. I had a bit of trouble getting out this morning." Dara glanced toward the street with the vague interest of someone who had been told the soup was slightly cold. "Oh, really? I didn't realize. I'll move it." "Thank you," Callum said. She did move it. For 4 days. Then it crept back. He knocked again. Same conversation, same glass of wine in different colors, same vague assurance. The car moved. The car returned. This cycle repeated itself through the autumn with the reliability of weather patterns. By November, Callum had knocked on Dara's door 7 times. Each conversation was pleasant on the surface. She was never rude. She never argued. She simply didn't change. He started taking photographs, not with any specific intention, but because he was an orderly man who kept records of receipts, of his children's medical appointments, of the tree trimming schedule with the Featherstones. He documented the Audi's position each time with a timestamp, the way you might document a slow leak in a roof before calling the plumber. His daughter, Nora, was 12 and noticed everything. She was with him one Saturday morning when they found the Audi blocking almost the full width of the entrance, and Callum had to park on the street and carry the grocery bags up the pavement. "Why don't you just call the council?" Nora asked, watching him stack the bags. "I've been trying to handle it directly first," Callum said. "That hasn't worked," Nora said simply. "No," he agreed. "It hasn't." He called the local council that Monday. The woman on the phone was sympathetic but measured. Blocking a private driveway was a civil matter unless the vehicle was on a public road. If the Audi was positioned on private property, even just partially, the council's hands were largely tied. She suggested he try mediation or consult a solicitor if the issue persisted. He tried the non-emergency police line next. The officer he spoke to was politely useless. "If it's not causing an obstruction on the public road, there's not much we can do, sir. It's a neighbor dispute." Callum began leaving notes on the Audi's windshield. Polite notes at first, typed because his handwriting was difficult to read under stress, and he didn't want to seem aggressive. "Dear neighbor, your vehicle is again partially blocking my driveway access. I would appreciate if you could park further along the road. Thank you. C. Briggs, number 14. The notes worked for a day or two each time. Then they stopped working. He found one of them tucked under his own windshield wiper one afternoon, with a single word written across it in purple marker. "Sorry," followed by a small smiley face. The Audi had not moved. In December, Callum got a new neighbor across the road, a man named Fletcher Obie, who ran a landscaping business and kept odd hours, and who introduced himself by bringing over a bottle of single malt whiskey and asking if the neighborhood had any characters. Callum told him about Dara. Fletcher listened with the focused attention of a man who had dealt with difficult people before. "You need to stop being polite," Fletcher said. I'm not sure how else to be, Callum said. That's the problem, Fletcher said, and left him to think about it. The new year arrived. The Audi remained. In January, Dara began having a man over regularly. Tall, broad-shouldered, drove a black pickup that also took liberties with street space. Together, the pickup and the Audi sometimes created a situation where Callum's driveway entrance was effectively sealed. He would come home from work and sit in his car on the street, engine running, staring at the gap between two vehicles that technically left a few inches of his entrance unblocked, but made actual entry impossible. He began timing how long these blockages lasted. The shortest was 40 minutes. The longest was 11 hours overnight. In February, Callum retained a solicitor. The solicitor, a careful woman named Petra Wynne, sent a formal letter to Dara Whitlock on headed paper detailing the ongoing obstruction, the photographic evidence, and the legal position regarding access rights to private property. Dara signed for the letter. Callum knew because the solicitor had sent it recorded delivery. For 3 weeks after that letter, the driveway was clear. Callum began to believe it was over. He told Nora it was resolved. He stopped taking photographs. He slept better. Then March arrived, and with it, a cold snap that kept everyone indoors, and somewhere in that gray transition, the Audi returned. Not to the same position as before. Worse. This time, Dara parked fully across the entrance. Not partially, not ambiguously, fully. The front of her car was level with the brick pillar on one side, and the rear extended past the opposite edge of the opening. His driveway might as well have been a wall. Callum sat in his car on the street for a long moment. Then he took out his phone and photographed the position from 4 angles. He sent the photographs to Petra Wynne with a message that said only, "It's escalating." Petra called him the next morning. "We can pursue a civil injunction, but it will take time and cost money, and enforcement is its own process even if we get one. Is there anything structural you could do? Physical barriers at the entrance that aren't on her property? A post, a bollard, something that marks the boundaries clearly?" Callum thought about that for several days. His father had been a builder. Not a professional one, a man who built things on weekends because he found satisfaction in the concrete reality of completed work. He had taught Callum basic bricklaying at the age of 10, and Callum had retained the skill the way you retain swimming or cycling, as something dormant in the hands. He had used it once since his father died, to rebuild a crumbling garden wall at the back of his property after he moved in. He measured the driveway entrance. It was exactly 2.8 meters wide. Standard single driveway, nothing unusual. He looked at the pillar on each side, old brick, solid, part of the original construction. He began to research planning permissions. In England, low boundary structures below a certain height in certain positions generally didn't require formal permission, particularly if they were on private land within defined parameters. He read the planning portal documents twice. He read forum discussions by contractors. He called a builder friend named Marcus, who came over one Saturday and walked the entrance slowly, nodding. "You can do this," Marcus said. "Low wall, both sides, tie it into the pillars. Narrows the entrance just enough to make it functionally yours without blocking it entirely. Or," he paused, studying the space, "if you wanted to go further, you could bring the walls all the way across with a removable central section. A kind of gate, essentially. Your gate, on your property." "Or," Callum said quietly, "no removable section." Marcus looked at him. "That would seal it." "Yes. You'd have to park on the street. I have a parking permit." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "When are you next going away?" 2 weeks, Callum said. "School holidays. I'm taking the kids to Portugal." Marcus looked at the entrance again, then at Callum. "How long have you been dealing with this?" 14 months. Marcus picked up his measuring tape. "What color mortar?" The 10 days before his departure were the most quietly purposeful days Callum had experienced in years. He ordered the materials. Reclaimed brick to match the existing pillars, sand, cement, the specific lime mortar that would integrate cleanly with the older construction. He arranged for Marcus to help him over 2 evenings. He told no one else what he was planning. Not Petra. Not Fletcher. Though Fletcher noticed the materials arriving and asked no questions, which Callum appreciated. He wrote nothing down. He made no announcements. He photographed the driveway entrance one final time in the blue morning light, the Audi sitting across it like a fixture, like something that had simply always been there. The first evening of work was the Tuesday before his flight. He and Marcus began at 6 in the evening, after the light softened and the street quieted. The foundation work was careful and methodical. Callum worked with the focused attention of a man performing surgery, each brick set with precision, each horizontal level checked twice. He had always found physical labor clarifying. The divorce, The custody, the 14 months of documented frustration, all of it receded when his hands were occupied with something real. Dara's car was not in her driveway that evening. She came home at 9:15 while they were cleaning up. She walked from her car to her front door without looking at the construction. Callum watched her from the corner of his eye and felt nothing in particular. The second evening was the Thursday before his flight. He took Nora and his son Elliot to their mother's on Wednesday, her week, and came home to an empty house and a silence that had no weight to it anymore. He worked alone that Thursday. Marcus had laid out everything that morning and told him the sequence. It was the most purely solitary evening Callum could remember in recent years. Just him and the diminishing light and the steady, irreversible progress of the wall. He finished at 11:40. He washed his hands at the outdoor tap. He stood at the pavement and looked at what he had built. The entrance to his driveway was sealed, not with a gate, not with a post, with a wall. A proper, level, mortared wall, approximately 60 centimeters high, built on private land, tied into both pillars, constructed with the same reclaimed brick as the existing structure so that it looked, in the nightlight, as if it had always been there. As if someone, long ago, had simply decided the driveway wasn't needed. He photographed it from the same 4 angles he had photographed the Audi's obstruction. Then he went inside, set his alarm, and slept better than he had in 14 months. He left for the airport at 5 the following morning. The street was still dark. As he rolled his suitcase to the waiting taxi, he paused and looked at the wall one more time. It was solid. It was his. It had been built entirely within the boundaries of his property. He got in the taxi. The driver pulled away. Callum looked at his phone. There was a text from Nora. "Have a safe flight, Dad. Bring me back something weird." He smiled and typed back, "Already done something weird. See you next week." He put his phone in his pocket. The taxi moved through the empty streets toward the motorway, and behind him on Wrentham Close, the first light of a cold Friday morning was beginning to touch the new wall across his driveway, brick by patient brick, as solid and permanent as any decision that cannot be taken back. The text from Dara Whitlock arrived at 7:43 in the morning, while Callum was at the departure gate. He hadn't given her his number, which meant she'd found it somewhere. A neighborhood app, possibly, or from someone on the street. The text read, "What have you done to your driveway?" He read it twice. Then he opened a new note on his phone and saved the text as a screenshot with a timestamp. He had been doing this for 14 months. Old habits. He did not reply. He boarded the plane. Portugal in late March was pale gold and warm without being hot, the ideal climate for a man who needed to think about nothing. He had rented a small farmhouse outside Comporta, 40 minutes from Lisbon, with terracotta floors and an outdoor table under a vine canopy where he ate breakfast each morning and read the kind of books he never had time for during working weeks. He had brought no work. He answered only essential emails. He swam in the cold Atlantic on the second day and felt the water strip something from him, some thin membrane of accumulated tension, and came out of it lighter. His phone continued to receive messages from the Wrentham Close Neighborhood app, which he hadn't muted before leaving. He read them the way you might read the sports results of a team you no longer supported, with detached interest rather than investment. The first message on the app had come from a woman named Sandra Pritchard, who lived at number 18 and was the app's most consistent contributor. It was posted at approximately 9 in the morning on the day Callum flew out. "Has anyone noticed the new wall at number 14? It looks like the driveway has been completely bricked up. Is this planned work?" Several replies followed. Most were the usual mixture of mild curiosity and neighborhood speculation. 2 were from people who had noticed the materials arriving the previous week and assumed it was routine maintenance. Then, Dara posted at 10:47. "This is not maintenance. My neighbor has deliberately blocked his driveway with a wall, and I don't understand why. I've been trying to contact him, and he isn't responding. Has anyone spoken to him?" Fletcher Obie replied almost immediately. "Not sure I'd expect him to respond while he's on holiday." A brief silence followed in the thread. Then Dara again. "He's on holiday? He built a wall and went on holiday?" Fletcher. "Looks that way." Callum read this exchange on his phone at the outdoor table under the vine canopy, with a cup of coffee and half a pastry, and for the first time in 14 months, he felt something he could only describe as equilibrium. He did not post to the app. He did not reply to Dara's texts, which had continued to arrive. By the end of the first day, there were 6 of them, ranging in tone from confused to annoyed to something approaching outrage. He read each one. He screenshotted each one. He responded to none. On the second day of his trip, a text arrived from a number he didn't recognize. It was brief. "Hi, this is Brielle, Dara's daughter. I don't know what's going on between you and my mom, but she's pretty stressed. Could you call her? He sat with that one for a while. Brielle was, he estimated, 17 or 18. She had nothing to do with any of this. He typed a reply, kept it brief and factual. Hi, Brielle. Your mother's car has been blocking my driveway access for over 14 months despite multiple requests to stop. I built the wall before going on holiday. I'm back next Friday. I'm happy to discuss with your mom when I return. He sent it and immediately felt slightly better because he had stated facts to another human being, and the facts were, when stated plainly, almost comically straightforward. Brielle did not reply. Dara sent 2 more texts that afternoon. Callum went for a walk through the fields behind the farmhouse and thought about his father, who had built things because building things was honest. When you built something, it was either plumb or it wasn't. It was either level or it wasn't. There was no ambiguity. He had always respected that about his father, and only now, standing in a Portuguese field in the late afternoon light, did he understand that he had respected it because his own life had been so full of ambiguity. In the marriage, in the divorce, in the 14 months of politely documented obstruction, and the wall was the first unambiguous thing he had done in years. On the 4th day, a text arrived from Petra Wynne. It was professional in tone, but he could read the curiosity underneath it. Callum, I've received an inquiry from a solicitor acting for your neighbor, Dara Whitlock, regarding a structure you've built at your property entrance. They're asking whether it was built with planning permission. I'd like to speak with you when convenient. Hope the holiday is going well. He called her that evening from the farmhouse terrace. Tell me about the wall, Petra said. He told her. The dimensions, the position, the research he had done beforehand, the planning portal documentation, the height, the materials, the location entirely within his property boundary. Petra was quiet for a moment. And you built it before going on holiday? Yes. And you didn't tell anyone? No. Another pause. From a legal standpoint, it's defensible. The planning question is the key one. I'll need to look at the specific regulations for your area, but at 60 centimeters on private land with no street frontage impact, you're likely within permitted development. The harder question for her solicitor is what grounds they'd have to demand removal. You have a right to build on your own property within permitted parameters. Yes, Callum said. The counter-argument they'll make is that the wall reduces the utility of your own property in a way that suggests the primary purpose was punitive rather than functional. My driveway has been inaccessible for large portions of the last 14 months, Callum said. I have documentation. If the entrance was already functionally blocked, then sealing it formally is simply accurate. Petra made a sound that was almost a laugh, but wasn't quite. That's a creative argument. It's a factual argument. I'll look at the planning regs and come back to you. Enjoy Portugal. He ate dinner that night at the outdoor table as the light turned and the vine canopy swayed slightly in the warm wind, and he thought about the word Petra had used, punitive, and he wondered whether that was true, and he decided that it was, partially, and that this didn't particularly trouble him. 14 months, 22 photographs, 7 conversations, 1 formal solicitor's letter, 1 conversation with the council, 1 conversation with the police, multiple notes. The punishment, if it could be called that, was proportional. It was, in fact, his only remaining option. His phone rang. It was an unknown number with a local area code. He almost didn't answer. Then he did. Is this Callum Briggs? A man's voice, measured and slightly formal. My name is Douglas Faint. I'm a solicitor acting for Dara Whitlock. I wonder if you'd have a moment. Callum stood up from the table and walked to the edge of the terrace. Below him, the field ran down toward a stand of cork oaks, their bark stripped to the red-orange beneath, standing in the late light like something wound down to essentials. I'm on holiday, Callum said. I'll be back on Friday. I understand, but this is a time-sensitive. Nothing about this situation has been time-sensitive for 14 months, Callum said. It can wait until Friday. A pause. Mr. Briggs, my client is concerned about the structural modification to your property entrance and its implications. Your client's car has been blocking that entrance, in whole or in part, for 14 months. I have photographic documentation with timestamps. I've spoken to your client directly on 7 occasions, sent formal notice through my own solicitor, and contacted both the local council and the police. The wall is on my property, built within permitted development parameters, and I have nothing further to discuss until Friday. Silence. I'll note that you're unwilling to engage before your return, Douglas Faint said, in the tone of a man who was accustomed to using notes as a mild threat. Please do, Callum said, and ended the call. He stood at the edge of the terrace for a while longer. The cork oaks were very still. The light was going. He felt something settle in his chest. Not victory, exactly, but resolution. the feeling of a door closing properly after years of it drifting open in the night. He went inside and made tea and read for 2 hours before sleeping. He came home on a Friday afternoon, the taxi pulling onto Rentham Close at 4:30. He asked the driver to stop a moment before the house. He wanted to see it with fresh eyes.